Stop. Yes.
Okay, welcome. Welcome everyone to the summer Sunday school. We're reading Sacred Rhythms. I think there's still copies downstairs.
I didn't see them.
I saw two this morning when they came in and there was one.
They sold out.
Okay.
There's
There's enough.
Oh, is
Okay,
it?
there's some more.
Is it at the entryway or?
No, I'll go.
No.
Okay. Well, let me know,
Andrew.
or if you don't have my number, let somebody know, if there aren't enough books, if somebody's still looking for a book and we can help you get one. Okay, so in reading this book together this summer, and I'm gonna this morning, I'm gonna kind of introduce us to the whole summer series in a sense, and then begin this week's. Question for me.
Who are you?
Oh. I am, Owl, Zoom. I'm Amber Black and, what else do you want me to say, Paul?
Are you a member of this church?
I'm becoming a member of the church this morning.
Oh. Very good.
I can say I first read this book, maybe 14 or 15 years ago. We were living in the country of Oman at the time. And I have these memories actually of trying some of these practices for the first time and like sitting in that room and being with God in that context. It was a really hard time. Oman was a really hard time in my life. And so that's a little bit about me and a little bit about me in this book. Anyway, this reading this book together, I hope is a little bit different, or I tend it to be a little bit different than some of the books that we read together, specifically because what I hope we can do is the focus being on transformation more than information. She kind of mentions that in the beginning, but really like experiencing God and seeing where he's at work in us and among us and kind of letting that shape our time together and things like that. So I'll be asking questions or leading discussion more in ways that, and I actually hope that we all can shape and lead the discussion in some ways. More with like what is God bringing up for you? What is this like more than like, what does she say on page 10 and what do you think about that? Let's see. Yeah, so more just like, where did God catch my attention and what's happening in me? And I think a lot of times, or it's been my experience, maybe I should say, that as other people share what God brings to their mind or how he's kind of stirring things up for them, I sometimes hear things that I need to hear that I'm not even sensitive enough to hear, right? I was maybe reading to get the reading done or something like that, and hearing how God's moving in others begins to move in me as well. And I think that there's a real nice spiritual fellowship and community in that. So ultimately sharing in the experience, where and how is God moving in us and what's that's like and how can we invite more of him. So in our time together, I'll kind of begin each week with a communal moment or practice, just some little bit of quiet, or depending on what the week is, it can have to do with what the practice is for the week, but we might do that together. And then we'll just kind of move into sharing and listening and asking one another and letting God move among us, guided by things that are coming up from the book, like what he's bringing up through the book for us. And so I do have questions and I'll sprinkle those in, but it's totally fine if I never get to them. So as we each share and listen and even ask questions that are coming up for us, God's spirit may move differently than what I would have, asked or led, and that's completely right. And then so there is a little bit, one thing that we want to steer ourselves away from a little bit is talking or thinking more about information or about fixing, right? So in that sense, if you notice one another, me included, like starting to get into, this is what I think about this or that, or, we're kind of making suggestions as to fix ourselves or each other, what feels like too much. feel free to just jump in and be the next one to share something that is that God's doing in you, or ask a new question or something like that. And we can kind of help collectively steer our conversation, and just keep it with what God's doing with us. Okay, that's kind of the intro to the summer as a whole. Does anybody have any questions or pushback, or what do you think you're doing? Like, okay,
Are you asking for us to repel?
you can.
I mean, I don't really feel like.
Okay. If that's not what God's bringing up for you, then I won't do it. Just kidding.
Okay.
Okay,
Do it slowly.
I'm gonna start us with a moment of silence. Actually, first I'm gonna ask, first I want to ask, just so I kind of know where we might be going this morning. Who had a chance to read anything at all before they came today? Okay, so a couple of us. Who read all of it? Did anybody get to read all of it? Okay, so just a few. Did anybody practice solitude more than once? Okay, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I think we'll probably today stay more with the introduction in chapter 1, and maybe get a little bit to solitude if that's where we get. But then if you didn't have a chance to do that this week or for this week, then go ahead and do that, or keep doing that this week. And try it out. And we'll kind of revisit it next week, as well as to not fully skip over it, but give us all a chance to sit with God in that way. And then so we'll talk a little bit about solitude next week, as well as the chapter that is chapter 3, if that was for next week. So we'll kind of double up a little bit next week in sharing on the practices. Okay, so let's begin with a little bit of quiet and silence. I'm going to ask you, if you are willing, if you're open to it, try to sit up a little bit straight and put your feet flat on the floor for just a minute. Just close your eyes and take in a deep breath. Imagine God being with us and among us, and just exhale really big. And then take in another breath. And see if you can kind of like relax the muscles in your face or the muscles in your back. And we're just going to breathe silently for a minute or two and see if you notice what is coming up for you, what is just kind of hanging around in your mind. And just notice. There's nothing right or wrong, good or bad, but just notice. Just take a few minutes to breathe here. God, we confess that quiet and stillness can be unsettling and uncomfortable, or maybe it feels much needed and lovely. I pray that you would be with us and move among us, and that you would show us individually and collectively what we need to do to get space to have more of you. Pray you would show us how to be still and to strive less. I really cannot see to read without my glasses, so thanks for bearing with me. I'm kind of curious how that quiet was for you. How did that, is anybody willing to share just like what that felt like, or was there anything that Was nicer, weirder, yeah.
Well, I started out just with all kinds of thoughts in myself, self-judgment, a lot of self-judgment, am I doing it right? And then after just a little while, that went away and I was just sitting there.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That's, um, yeah. My head was really noisy. I got really uncomfortable that you guys might be uncomfortable. Right, it's like I couldn't actually, it was really noisy in my mind.
I was fortunate to have a therapist who would start with this practice almost every session with some guided imagery, and so right away I felt comfortable and yeah, so you have a nice voice and soothing
Thanks.
information. Yeah.
Anybody else?
So for me today, the second time I did it this week, I was out on the deck and the sun was shining and it was warm. And it was like I can go right back there visually and how I felt by pulling back that last experience I had. The day before I was in the house, when I'm in the house, I have lists, it was like just getting out and being in a different environment. And then to be able to visualize that setting.
Some of it sounds like what each of you are saying is that it's like this moment became those past moments, like there was a memory that was kind of with you experientially. Interesting. Pam, what were you gonna say?
I have a hard time shutting down without going, okay, after church, I need to do this and do that, and don't forget you have to do this, and then, and it's just like, stop, but because I have a hard time, quit thinking of all the things I still need to do. And I would need longer time. That was not enough time for me to calm down. I was still racing.
Sure.
And then I had to switch bells, and that reminded me of something else,
I
she
can
said,
relate to her a lot. I don't know how far you've gotten in everything, but I feel like
yeah,
I bet you can relate to her a lot.
so.
Brady, were you gonna say something?
No.
Okay. I thought I caught an inference. Okay, so going into chat, did you say something?
I mean, it was overwhelmingly pleasant. It's really nice, just as a neurodiverse person, to have a moment of silence because it's hard for me to filter out incoming sensory data. So when there is nothing else going on, it's quiet in the room, it feels welcoming and calming and like, oh, good. I can take a break from having to process everything that's going on around me and filter it out and figure out how to ignore things that I'm trying to not pay attention to. So I guess the thing that I experienced was a sense of relief and a little bit of joy. So that was really lovely. I kind of want to go back to the quiet stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody will close our.
Right.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so let's kind of move into chapter 1. I think this was just her introduction, and she's kind of talking about, if I remember correctly, I did reread the book in advance, so please feel free to corral me in to be like, no, that's actually not an introduction. But she introduces some thoughts about spiritual transformation in general. I think she might begin to discuss her own experience. What in these pages, like, what came up for you as you were reading? And by that I kind of mean like, were there memories? Yeah, you shaking your head, yes.
I did a 1-day silent retreat, and I think that was in the first chapter. And it's probably been close to 20 years ago. And I was in a group, an Abbey, and we didn't speak to each other the whole day. And I have visual pictures still coming to my mind of the things I journaled and saw and noticed. And absolute joy that I felt sitting across from somebody I did not know while we ate lunch. And a funny thing happened and we're sitting there laughing. We're not talking. And it was just this sense of being in kind of communion with people without words. And so that's what came back to me when I was reading about that silent retreat. It's like, we don't do silence.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously a very verbal person in this group. So it is a discipline to not speak.
Yeah. Did anybody else have a memory or something regarding silence or like, noise or silence or what came up for you in that? It's fine if it's nothing, just giving space for us to explore it.
I think I'm immediately afraid of it because I don't know what will happen.
Mm,
I'm like, I don't want to be shown whatever it is that's maybe there. And so I feel apprehensive about it almost immediately.
What does it feel like could happen? Like, what could be the monster at the end of the book?
Terrible. I mean, not terrible, but
Huh.
maybe emotion. That's like something to be from.
Hmm. What did you say?
I have for some time now, I don't even know how long, made a point of s- setting aside a certain amount of my prayer time. Or just listening, listening for God's voice. And so this really doesn't feel foreign to me.
Yeah.
In 1987, I had an experience where Christ was in the room. And I felt directed
Uh-huh.
following that experience, knowing that, what was expected, where to go, what to say, what to do.
Hmm. So with you and then also like in a direction, like it sounds like it was personal to you, like what was.
I had my purpose.
Mhm, mhm.
It was defined for me and it's what I've tried to do ever since.
In respect to, I'm finding myself being curious, like did you already have that time of quiet set out and then that's what happened as a result of being in that silence?
That was kind of the beginning
Okay.
of setting that out. I was still a young father at the time.
Mhm.
And um, and so I was developing that um, discipline to just spend that time with God each day,
Mhm.
to stay in touch with where my purpose was going.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. So it sounds like there's kind of a mixture. Some of us feel comfortable or maybe even relieved in silence, and some of us, the quiet is a little bit more agitating or a place where it quickly, I'm kind of picturing, if you're cooking or something and you run the spatula through and it's like the dough just fills it right back in, right? Like there's, as soon as you put a little bit of quiet there, it's like everything else pours right back in because there's just a lot. What else? What else from the introduction came up for you? Or maybe there was something that you underlined. So I'm curious, like what was it that you noticed, underlined, or like maybe it resonated with you? You read a sentence and you were like, whoa.
Well, I guess it mentions a lot in chapter 1 about how bad do you want it? What do you want from me? Because I remember reading the stories that Jesus said to, people, like a blind man would come in, he goes, well, what do you want from me? It's like, it's obvious, I want to be healed, or the guy that was at, the pool, and do you want to be healed? And it's just like, he oftentimes asked those questions, and it was like an obvious question. What do you want from me? I want to be healed. Do you really want this? It's like, yeah, and so I thought that was interesting because he did ask those questions a lot. And so what's the point of those questions that seems like, and so I'm thinking, I need to, when I talk to God, he's like, what do you want from me? It's like, oh, what is it that you really want?
Yeah. And that's like, yeah, throughout chapter one, she's kind of waking up this thing of desire. Like, what is it that you want? We can go there too. We can go ahead and move into chapter one. I will say I noticed one of the things that I think I noticed in the introduction, rereading it, it's just the on page 11, she talks about the opening to the mystery of spiritual transformation and how it's like we can be still and be present. Like we can do these things to invite it, but you can't, she doesn't use this analogy, but it's like you can't unfold the rose, right? Like if you can break, you can do the soil, you can do everything to prune and to water and make sure it's getting sunlight, but you can invite it to grow. Right. But you can't be like, I think I want you to look like this, like, pull it open and get anything beautiful out of it. And there's kind of a mystery to that for us, which a lot of my tradition was very uncomfortable with the mystery of things, right? It was, this is how you do it. This is when you do it. This is what will help you grow. And this is maybe you're not a good Christian if you didn't, so I think that mystery of things has been different for me in the second half of my life.
I feel kind of almost a distrust of my own desires.
Yeah.
Like I don't really know what's best or it isn't a good Christian thing to want or.
Sure. Yeah. Where do you think if I ask a question and you don't want to answer, please just say like pass or I don't know yet, or, that's completely fine. I'm curious if you have a sense of like where where that comes from, or like I kind of imagine, we probably weren't born. I have the same thing, by the way, and she mentions this too. I recognize like we probably weren't born being distrustful of what we thought we wanted, right? It's like we felt hungry and we cried for food. We cried because we needed to cry and didn't feel or didn't think anything about it, right? We weren't formed and born distrusting the needs or the desires that were coming out for us. So somewhere along the way, we caught that idea, whether it's a good idea sorry, I'm going to say helpful and less helpful, whether it's a helpful idea or a less helpful idea, we caught it along the way. And sometimes when I can pause to say, where did I catch that from? It can help me untangle it a little bit.
She actually says in here, if we have grown up with a concept that humans are totally depraved.
Yeah.
She says that, then how do we trust what is a true desire? To really, and there's a song, this is really kind of funny because back experiencing my first times of really being in that silent, vulnerable place. And the song that came to mind was the Doobie Brothers. I know what it means to hide my heart from a long time ago. It keeps you running. And it repeats that over and over again. It keeps you running. And so when I hear you say that, Brady, about there is vulnerability in going to desire or going to, I don't know what's going to come up. I don't know.
It's also an opportunity to refine how we look at our desires. How, what is it that we really want versus what is it that we think we want? And so I think it's an invitation to really get to know ourselves a little better.
And then I don't even know where it was, but then do I have fear that I won't get? That desire will be left unfulfilled. If I name it and I don't feel like I'm gonna receive it, that's a whole nother scary thing. I'm being that vulnerable.
Yeah.
But
You're being called out.
You were gonna say something.
I feel like I think what Brady was saying, I think I have a hard time with quiet because I do a lot of self gatekeeping because I was in a tradition for a long time where you were supposed to have these like amazing thoughts and Jesus was going to talk to you when you were like in that state. And if you didn't, then there's something wrong with you. And so then you're trying to manufacture it yourself. And so I have this like mental gatekeeping that happens and I can't just stop because I'm like this innate manufacturing thing. And I had a really interesting experience, and this is not excusing the fact that I don't maybe need to get over that, but like we were at Presbytery this week and the speaker was it was kind of like a almost like a ping pong uh brainstorming kind of thing. She'd say something and then she's like, we're speaking from our guts, like what, just not no inhibiting, just like what is the first thing that comes to your head, and it just popping around to everyone at Presbytery. And it was, to me, it brought something to my mind that I was like, oh, whoa, where was that? And and that is something that I think like I should get out of a silence practice, but like I can't because there's a barrier there. And in that moment, I was just like, cool, like something really clicked. And then just hearing the noise around me, but it was meaningful noise, right? And it actually helped draw something out of my head. Um, Again, not excusing that that is the only way to do it, but like for, I don't know, for me, it was like a noisy way of being quiet. I don't know how to explain it.
Who else feels suspicious of desire? Finds that, I mean, you don't have to answer, but I have found myself in this place a lot. In recent years, it shifted a little bit because of some rule specific things, but like I didn't, the things that has helped it shift were not things I ever expected to be exposed to, if that makes sense. So I mean, does anybody else kind of have that? Yeah.
I can't help but shake the notion that my whole purpose for being here is selfishly motivated. Self-preservation. It's the ultimate retirement plan. I mean, realistically, and to Chris's point, what does it take to be a good Christian? I think there's two ingredients. Number one is faith, obviously, but number two is a recognition that is God that works through you. You don't produce the result, God produces the result. And I think that relieves us of needing to overthink this stuff. If I'm here without showing too much, there's a phrase in AA, fake it till you make it. And it means show up. Just show up as you are with all your faults, and you're going to find you're not alone in that. And see what the Lord can do with that. That to me is kind of, and if it's approached from faith, and yeah, okay, I probably do have a selfish motive in this. The alternative doesn't sound very fun to me. But it doesn't mean there isn't sacrifice. It doesn't mean this isn't comfortable all the way through. I think I can live with that. I don't think that is necessarily being a bad Christian. I think if the Lord can use me and help one or two other people along the way, I'll feel pretty accomplished about that, because then I can take pride in what God has done. And that is something that even Paul would say, yeah, do that. So anyway, I know that's a little disjointed, but I might, just based on this, it seems, yeah, we're all kind of a mix of true, a mix of of different motivations, and that's part of being human. And we're on a journey. We're not the end product yet.
And sometimes being selfish isn't bad. Because there's a place where what we think of within the church is selfishness, or we sometimes look at certain things as being selfish, when in reality, we are just looking at having healthy boundaries. And just deciding, you know what, I'm done with this. I need to go home and I need to rest. I need to take care of myself, or I'm not going to help this person because I'm not the right person to help them. Right? And
Yeah.
recognizing that you're not the appropriate person to give aid to certain people who may very have a clear-cut need. You just are not the right person to meet that need. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense, because
I
when
just-
you try in that case, you can really screw.
Oh, you can really hurt people. And if I am not taking care of myself, if I am not getting enough sleep, if I am not eating appropriately or hydrating, or even just defending my private fun time, like where I get to go do something I want to do, I am less effective as a teacher, I'm less effective as a husband, I'm less effective as a friend, and it ends up hurting other people in the long run. So I think that it's very important to recognize that just because you're having good boundaries doesn't mean that, I mean, yes, you're practicing a form of selfishness, but it's not inherently sinful. Does it make sense?
Self-care, not selfish. No.
It's still selfish, but it's not, but we have stigmatized the term selfishness so much. Any thought of doing something for ourselves, we immediately go, oh, we probably shouldn't be doing that. Does that make
Jesus
sense?
needed his downtime.
Jesus was, and you look, there are moments where Jesus is very selfish. He was like, I'm get in the damn boat and get out of here. I'm gonna go pray. And the disciples are like, huh? Oh, okay, fine. We'll see you later. And then I think that led to the whole walking on the water instance, right? I mean, and he exhibited what we would classify as selfish behavior in that moment. But again, I can see Mickey's like, but that's not really selfish, again, because I think we've stigmatized that term so much, right? Yes.
So I was just thinking as I was going through, we focus on the teachings of
Mhm.
Jesus. But he was hanging out with people, and I'm sure
Yeah.
it was fun. I mean, I'm sure
Yes.
they ate a lot, they spent time together, and they had fun together.
Right.
And then the one phrase in here is this is a journey we're not meant to take alone.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like, that's why this feels like an appropriate
Mhm.
thing in the journey to self-transformation it's in community.
I remember being surprised by like one day reading when like, somewhere in the New Testament, I think it's just like each one should look not only to their own interests, but also the interests of others. And it's like the verse is not only to your own interests, right? It doesn't say to not look to your own interests.
Right.
You know,
Not only.
it just says not only. And another thing that came up for me is as you were talking, Paul, is I remember a long time ago reading in a group, Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Life Together. And I couldn't tell you probably any specifics about the book any longer, but one of the things that really stuck with me in this Life Together thing is he's like, in a sense, and if you've read it and I'm wrong, forgive me, this is what God brought up for me as I read it. But this sense that it's like when we come together, like we need to come together so that I can be most fully who I am in God, right? Like this shapes who I am in God, but I also need to be most fully who I am in God to bring it together, right? So we do these both things where we are fully ourselves in order to give that to one another, because we're the body, not one of us is all the parts, you know? And similarly, we come together because then like that fuels who we are individually, and that we need both of those parts. And anyway, that just came up while you're
Sure, that makes total sense.
Well, I'm looking on page 25 in the middle lower part. And it's the author's talking about it's even riskier to acknowledge it's even riskier to refuse to acknowledge what's real within us, meaning all those ambitions, pride, all those desires. Because whether we acknowledge them or not, these dynamics are at work yielding a subterranean power over us. And the power only gets stronger the longer we repress them. How much safer it is for ourselves and everyone around us if we open up our desires in Jesus's presence and allow him to help us sift through them. So I'm just curious about that. Like, suppose I want to have my meditative time, my quiet time, and I'm very angry about something. To try to say to myself, I'm not allowed to have that while I'm going into my quiet time might be counterproductive because it's there. It's just-
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And your sense about that, I mean, she could look around the room. I bet like we would kind of say, your sense of that is, yeah, I mean, what I hear you saying is I'm coming before God and then I'm telling myself I shouldn't do this. And this whole thing is like a distraction instead of being able to go, well, God knows it anyway, right? And being like, okay, God, this is honestly just how I feel about it. Like, and from there you can begin to maybe pull the thread, right? Of like, whether wherever, it's almost sometimes I feel like wherever God takes it, it's like sometimes I want to confess that. Sometimes I want to pull the thread a little bit about like, God, help me see what's making me so angry. Like in some sense, I know angry is on the surface, but usually if you start pulling the thread, if I start pulling a thread, I find that there's hurt or there is a sense of injustice, fear. Yeah. And so if I start naming these things in God's presence and just bringing them up, sometimes I can anything from they just bubble to the surface. There's at least some relief or feeling seen, right? Like if Brady's, I had a really bad experience with a work partner last year, or the past couple years, and it's like there's a part of me that's like I kind of wish God's vengeance on this person. I'll be honest. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to feel that or if I'm not, if that's good, bad. I'm like, it's in the Bible, so some other people felt that at some point in time. But it's like, but Birdie's like, yeah, because that is awful. Right. And so, and without going too far into that, I think that sometimes God is sitting with us being like, yeah, because that is awful. So sorry you have to go through that. So sorry that has happened where there's anger spewing up like that. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
So if you're wishing God's vengeance on this person,
I'll try to work for that.
have you actually turned it over to him to let him take care of it?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, I'm probably still, holding on to it, but I do, I've found that to the degree I can, that's not what let go on God means, but like, it doesn't feel good to carry it around. But it doesn't, I notice that it does not feel good to me. I have to let it go. And so at the same time, it's like, of course, hurts always crawl up and again, I'm happy to share more in a different context because I don't want to dominate the conversation, but there's that thing where I find there was a moment where I was like, okay, when this starts festering in my head, I felt like God gave me you just need to get up and get on your feet. Like you end up kind of festering when you're sitting somewhere, you're laying in bed or whatever. And it's like, if you'll get on your feet, you can shake it off. And it has been the case. It's like, if I find myself ruminating, if I get on my feet, which feels accessible to me, it wouldn't have in all seasons of my life, but it feels accessible to me now, then I can kind of just get on with my way and kind of let it go. And it's not the anger at her that's ruminating, it's the experience. Like how I felt in some of the darker senses of the experience. It's not really anger anymore. So I hope that's true. But I think continue to ask me because I don't know. It'll keep coming up.
I think that kind of spills nicely off of what we talked about last week when we were finishing up Galatians and we were talking about the fruits of the Spirit. And it's come back in my head a bunch of times this week what Michael had said about abiding in God and not looking to fix the things in the list or try to be the things in the list, but to abide in God, and then those things will become fruit.
Yeah.
And so I think the answer is not to try to make the checklist. It's to just be with God and be honest with God, and then He will do the changing, right? And that doesn't mean it's going to change tomorrow, and it doesn't, but I think all of us in this room have probably experienced a time where something about your thoughts or your way of approaching situations or whatever it is has changed, and you go, that was not me, because the thing I would have done before is completely not that. And it's like a piece of my brain has been removed and put something else in there. And it's kind of freaky and awesome, but like that's really the way the way forward with that stuff, right? But it doesn't happen immediately, and sometimes you have to sit in things for a while. And some things we may sit with until we leave this planet. I mean, but I think there's just that like being rooted in the presence of God and letting him work on us, right?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that depends on how much time we choose to spend time listening for God's voice.
A piece of it, but I've been hit on the head proverbially by a bunch of 2x4s many times in my life when I was not listening, and I was forced to listen. Because I think God knows I'm a noisy person, and so he knows I need. That's the cool thing about God. Like, even though I should practice these things and I'm hoping to learn things about this, he also knows who I am and meets me where I am and will speak to me the way I need to be spoken to. And I so appreciate that, because it doesn't mean I have to create something different about myself in order for God to meet me there.
Right.
That it brings to mind wonderful counselor. And that phrase alone, I mean, over 2,000 years of Christianity and the entire history of the human race, God has heard us. I think he knows what he's doing. And if I come along and say, oh, well, you can't possibly know my experience, it's absolutely arrogant. Because of course he has, of course he knows. So he's just waiting for us to open up to him and seeing what the change includes. I wish I could follow my own advice.
Sarah, something I do want to mention what you said brought up for me is I think she does a good job in the book of saying this, but if it doesn't jump out at you, I want to say I think her purpose here is not to say, here are 8 things you should do to like whatever, but rather saying, here's a way to be still and sit with God and open up to that experience. Here's another way. And by the end, she's kind of like, which of these or other things, because she even mentions like spiritual friendship, but she doesn't have a chapter on that, right? And then at the end, she is kind of going through some different people's things that are really meaningful to them. They're not things that she really mentions in the book. But I think she's kind of trying to say, notice where and how and stuff, that this is how God shows himself for you, right, in this season of your life. And certainly not a checklist, but rather an opportunity, an invitation, and to be real with what the response is, right? Like I kind of imagine, like let's say with solitude, which we'll talk about more next week, but it's like some of us may really need it, but not be able to access it in this season, right? It's like some people, like I like the quiet and stuff so much. It's like the sensory deprivation thing, but I almost can get lost in it. And it can become self-indulgent in a way, because there's something that feels really safe about it, and the rest of the world doesn't feel so safe as that. So there's kind of these like, I feel like and I'm happy and I'm interested in hearing what other people, how you see this. But God, like, I think we can trust him and even trust our own experience to say, when I have approached God this way, or sat still in this way, or been with people in this way, or, like I felt God with me, and that is as real as I know. And I want more of God. So it's okay for me to have more of that or want more of that. And if it's different than somebody else, if it's not, whatever, it's like our soul knows, right? And we know, it's making me think of like the voice of the shepherd thing, right? Like we know his voice. And it's okay to respond to that, even if it's unique or different.
I think that's for me, the phrase that hit me this week was that you are known by God and you are loved by God. That connection. And then my brain went to, so then how does that play out? That you know others and love others, And I realize that's where I feel safe, is when I'm around people who truly know me, to the point where I don't have to put on an air or work hard at communicating with them. I can just be who I am, and I know that I will be loved. And so that for me is a place of stillness, even though there's tons of conversation or playing board games or whatever happens in the time, eating, whatever. But I feel still in that place, even in activity, because those two like really intimate needs are met. And it's really spurred me on this week to then, how do I need to do that? Because if that means something to me, it means something to someone else too. And so I don't know, that's just where my head has been trying to take that word that I received and figure out like, what do I need to do to carry that outward as well?
It's like maybe you're free of the shoulds and the oughts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can relate to that. We have a few more minutes. I'm gonna invite us to come back to this idea of desire, because I do think it's central to what she's kind of getting at through the whole book, and certainly in this first chapter. And I suspect that there is a little bit, I suspect more of us than have spoken up have the sense that desire is dangerous, right? That like to say, what is it that I want is dangerous. And I've really wrestled with this, so maybe I'm kind of projecting a bit, but does that resonate with you if I say like, I'm not quite sure I'm all in on, actually naming what I think I want. Maybe I think it's selfish, or maybe it could lead me somewhere bad. I think that was the message that I got in earlier.
I think it's hard to know what but because like for me, I could say, I don't know what it means to say like my desires on it, because I don't trust them, because it's like, well, my desire is to sit on the couch, watch TV and eat Cheetos all day. Right? Like, and if that's what you want to do, it's like, well, so now I know that I'm maybe not supposed to do that. Well, then now that's hot, right? And or like, oh, you should do the dishes. Like, do you want to do the dishes? Like, no, I've like 0 times in my life have I ever wanted to do that. But I do the dishes out of a should or an ought or something like that. And so when I look at that, I go, I have no, if I can find a desire, I don't have any means with which to make a decision if it's good or not, really, outside of some oughts and shoulds that go in there. It's like, do I want to go to church? Probably not. I'd rather sit and watch TV and eat Cheetos. But I should, because there's some sort of good there there is good outside of my desires. And so, me, the safest thing that seems to lead me into some sort of good is not following my desires, but following some of these shoulds and oughts. And so it gets very confusing for me, because I don't feel like I have a real strong matrix with which to discern what is good or what is not with my desires. So that's just a word.
Yeah, I think so often we assume God doesn't want us to do something. When really he's very open to it. It's just our bent perspective that tells us not to. And it can be very similar to what would be considered sinful or evil. But if the motive is right, it can be part of God's will.
Fishing is okay, unless it's on a Sunday.
Unless you take me. Yeah.
I would think more of an emotional, I get more of this sense of when you talk about desires, it feels not like an action necessarily, but more. It's more of an emotional response, like emotionally, what do I want? And use it to be seen and loved. That's a desire I have, to be seen and known and loved. And I think I feel like it's kind of like an onion. It's like I go to this one and then there's another one underneath. And the place I went this week is I want to quit feeling pain. I want And if you think of all the addictions and busyness and all the things we do to avoid feeling.
Mhm.
And this is kind of what came to me this week is that Christ suffered on the cross, but he suffers with me every day.
Mhm.
And that is where I can connect with other people. It's more through suffering than through joy and happiness, though that happens too. But I had two experiences on Saturday with two different people that if I hadn't tapped into that, I wouldn't have seen what was in their face and in their life. And so I want that to be gone. That's a desire I have. But I also know that Christ is suffering with me and I need to do that with others. And if I erase mine, I will not see it or connect to it in others.
Bruce, did you ever thought?
I do, when Vicky and I first started coming back to church, I was very eager and jumped in, started reading a lot and getting into it. And I found that I got so wrapped up in my own head that I was stumbling over myself. And I think in part because I was trying to do it, me. And anyway, I I do think I know God meets us where we are, which means he's open. He understands. He knows. And yes, there's an ideal that we all want to strive for. We want to be perfect like Christ. It's a good motive. It's a good thing to shoot for, but it's something that I don't think any of us is going to see, with few exceptions, within our lifetime. I think we're human, and that carries with it the burden. And it's easy then to sit there and examine your motives. The one motive I keep coming back to, and it's the one that I do pray about, but it's we're supposed to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, strength, and mind. And I don't do that all the time. In fact, I do it very little. I find myself reacting in anger to things and so on. And if I was loving God at that very moment, it probably wouldn't play out like that. But as imperfect as I am, God is perfect, and he's shown an interest in my life. I'm here. And I could still screw it up. I think I'm capable of doing that, but I sure can't save myself. So my actions aren't the primary equation. My faith is. My faith is important. I mean, all along the way, Jesus said, your faith has made you well. And I think that's one thing we should all hold on to. And we should also hold on to the fact that God isn't done with us yet. And I don't think he's going to abandon us.
That's a good word.
And I think just rephrasing a little bit, because I think coming from a tradition of like, and I'm not saying that sin isn't a thing, and then there's all of that, but like having such a focus on that and like erasing that, but more having us just become who we're meant to be, who we're created to be, like viewing it from that perspective and not erasing the negative. It's a part of it, but helping us flourish and become who we were created to be. I think that is a mindset that I was not given, and that I'm just trying to figure out how to replace an old narrative with that.
And that parallels living under grace versus living under the law.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we see it so much in other areas of life. That like if you focus on the negative things or you focus on the
Well, whatever you focus on is where you're going to go.
yes. That's a much better way to say it. So this thing of like, if I like, what would it be like if I or we or an entire body could be like, who has God made me to be? And I'm doing this with other people, so I'm not going to be able to just like totally run amok or whatever, but like and how like and essentially inviting more and more and more of God in personally and communally these things and seeking that, like what would that, how would that flourish differently than like okay, I just need to keep pulling weeds, I need to keep pulling weeds, where are all the like, where are all the little, you know, all the little nuisances or whatever. And then I'm seeing all the little nuisances and, I feel that, I feel that. We have only a few minutes left and I'm curious, I mean, maybe you kind of started us off, and nobody has to say anything, but I'm curious if anybody is open to sharing. If anything came up for you as, you know, in the first chapter, there was this kind of a prompt to say what, like to the Lord, like, sorry, or imagine that God's asking you, what do you want me to do for you? Like, what is the desire, that's there, right now? Is anybody willing to share what came up for you if you did that?
I guess it just kind of reminded me of something I decided a long time ago.
Hmm.
I want what God wants, because I know that what God wants is what's best for me.
Mhm, mhm,
And it's not always easy to see that. It's not always easy to even accept it,
mhm,
because our desires may be so different.
mhm.
But the more we try to trust in that,
Mhm.
um, I think the easier it becomes.
I think it, some ways it's easier, instead of thinking of desire, to think of longing.
Yeah.
You know, what are we all longing for? And, longing for abiding in God, longing for connection.
Mhm.
And understanding where we fit in to the community.
I think what came up for me was being, I, you know, there's been a lot of years of a lot of things, and I think I don't remember, I mean, I vaguely remember, but I think I don't know what it is like to be myself. And what I mean by that is like, I do think, rightly or wrongly, that like, God made us all, um, in such a way that we're uniquely used by him in our circumstances and in our giftedness or whatever we want to say, even just in what interests us and things like that. And I think I've just through life and circumstance and honestly learning to be really cynical, like learning to not trust myself. I feel like I've had a lot of messages of like, don't trust yourself, right? And I feel disconnected from probably who God made me to be and wanting him to make that whole and have a chance to be that, right? And it's like, yes, if he may give it or not give it, and there is certainly a sense of knowing that, and wanting what he wants more than wanting that. And I actually think that's where I've been for a lot of years, is being like, God, I'm going to take good and bad. Like I'm going to take whatever you have to give, and accept that at your hands, because that is your intention, and it's your right as God to do that. Also, if I'm honest with what I want, you know, or like I do have a desire to say, what is it like to show up as me and see what that's like? And God being in the world through this person, as like you know, I want to see God be himself in each one of you and see that together. And I may not know how to do that super well. So I think that's a desire that I have. Anybody else? All right, well, we're at time, so I'll say a prayer for us, and Lord, thank you for being with us, both personally and your spirit among us. I pray that as we are kind of journeying through the words that you have given the author, that you would draw us actually into you, and pray that you would give us the courage, even where needed, to be honest with our own experience and our own doubts and fears, to the end that you're transformed and know and have more and more of you. And I ask in Jesus' name, amen. It's super nice to be